Okay, this is going to be a video response to Three Rivers Knives. He wanted you to do a video and tell your knife story. I've been wanting to do a video like this for a while, but I really didn't have a idea, direction, which one I wanted to go, or show certain ones and what they were. So it's a good idea, and I really liked it, so I thought I'd put my 2 cents worth in. So let's start with some of the first knives I can remember having when I was a little boy. I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and my mom and dad were in a motorcycle accident, and my mom got her leg crushed, and so I went and lived with my grandparents for about my first year of school. And I remember my grandfather was the first one to give me a knife, and he gave me one like this. And basically what this is just a little, we call them rosewood knives, and basically a rosewood knife is a knife that had a coating on the outside of it that was made out of the type of wood was rosewood. So this is the type of knife I had, just a little pocket pen knife they call them. This one's kind of new, so it's really tough to open up. I haven't even oiled it yet, but this is the kind of knife that I had. And when I was very little, what we used to do is we had a potbelly stove that we burnt coal in, and what we do is, me and my grandfather, I remember many days, we'd sit out on the front porch and we'd take sticks, and we called it whittling. And what we would do is we'd peel the bark off the sticks, and then he'd usually break the sticks up in little pieces, and we'd use it to put in to start a potbelly stove, where you put newspaper in, you put the shavings in on top of it, and then you put a few golf ball size things of coal in there, and you use that to start the coal with, because it's got to have a lot of heat to get started. And I remember he showed me how to do it so many times, where you just take a stick and hold it in this hand and always shave away from you, and then you roll it in your hand and you keep shaving away, and we just make piles of shavings, and that's what we did. And then I remember him buying me a few of them. They were just kind of like this, and this is just a little cheap version of that, but they were called rosewood because of the type of wood on them. And I like those knives, but over the years, I had 3 boys, so I seem to have lost a lot of knives. I've had a lot more than what I have in front of me now. So I started with something like this, and then I remember I've had this one forever. I've had this one probably 30 years. You could tell by the rust and everything that's on it. I've sharpened it to the point where I've deformed the blade, and I've used this for everything. Cutting wire to I don't know, a little camp knife. But it had these metal type handles on the outside, and they cracked on the end, and eventually I found out if you take them handles off, it's pretty thin, it fits in your pocket well. And so I had these type to start out with, and then I can't remember, I think this is a Saber, and my dad gave me this a long time ago. I can't even remember how long ago it was, but I remember having this forever, and I hid it in a cigar box. And that's how my boys actually didn't get a hold of this one, because I had it hid. But this is a Saber, and I can't even find these anymore. But this, it's rusted up, it's beat up. And what I do is I've oiled this one a few times, and get you some good 3-in-1 oil and keep them lubricated up, especially in the hinges right there. They're pretty decent. So I went from there, and I started carrying something like this. Now these are a hunting type knife, and these are a Boker. Now these, man, I'm telling you what, these are probably 30 years old, and I've hid these from my boys too, because I didn't want them playing with them. But these I've used for many years, and they came with a set like this, and that little paring knife. I remember getting this probably in high school. And I've had this for a long time, and I didn't even wear it on a belt. I basically kept it. If we'd go camping or something, I'd keep it in with my stuff, and I had it in a bag in the bottom of a fishing box for a long time. And it's just something you want to hold on to, something your family gives to you. But I don't even think you could see the detail on there anymore, but if I can get that a little closer here. But these are pretty decent little knives right here. I've been offered quite a bit of money for these knives right here, and I kept turning it down. And my son had these out one time, and he was going to put them in a tackle box. I was like, oh, no, no. Let them go back to where they was at. So then you go to, I'll explain that in a minute. You get a knife like this. This is an old timer. This is a straight old time knife. And I know everyone has these. And I've sharpened this to a deformed blade too, but they hold an edge forever. And I remember last time I went deer hunting, I almost lost this knife. I dropped it out of a tree. And we couldn't find it for the longest time. Me and my brother actually went back up there the next day, and it had dropped down in between some trees, and luckily he found it. But what I did, even since the service, is I take rubber bands. So you know, and what you do is you wrap a rubber band around a knife, and you know, I went to airborne school and air assault school, and you know, you jump out of a plane, you don't want to lose something like that. So the rubber band basically holds it in there, so when you put it on your belt, it don't. You know, that snap's good, but you catch that snap and it comes loose. But, you know, that's the next one I've had. So I really went from that, and then right when I went into service, now a lot of people don't like these, but let me tell you what. These two right here is a Gerber set that I got 20-some years ago when I was in the service, right before I went to Iraq. Now, people say, I don't like a Gerber, it don't hold an edge. That knife right there, I've had at least 25 years. It's got a great rubber handle on it. It's, you know, it's made out of Portland, Oregon. I've used it so much the serrations are almost gone on it. But this knife, it's cut a lot of MREs open, I'll tell you. It's cut a lot of cord. When I was in Pathfinder school and after Pathfinder school, this cut a lot of duct tape and strapping and cord, because you got to tie everything down. And then this Gerber tool, oh, this thing has it's been beat up like you wouldn't believe. I've used this to repair lights and oh man, a lot of different things. I remember one night no one had a can opener. I was the only one who had a can opener to open them big sea rats. It's a great big pan. And you know, everybody says, oh, you ought to have a Leatherman. Well, this has never failed me in 20 years. I don't see why I have to buy a Leatherman when this works just as well. I remember these two right here were in a set. And I think my ex-wife bought these at Sam's for like less than $20. And they're worth that like you wouldn't believe. So I had those. And I've kept them, and I've tried to keep my boys out of them, and I've lost quite a few knives because of them, basically. But the next one I want to show you is kind of unique. This is nothing more than an old butcher's knife. And I want to show you this one for the simple fact of this one was used for that purpose there. This is a knife that is used for cutting meat. And this is a new version of this. But this butcher's knife, I took this to Iraq with me. Anybody that's had a rucksack knows that there's a radio flap at the top of that rucksack. And I used this knife many times to cut open apples, cut open oranges. You know, we'd cut meat with this. And the reason is, there was bugs in them. And a lot of guys didn't know there was bugs in apples and oranges, and they ate them anyways because they didn't know to look inside of them. Because we were getting a lot of food from, you know, South America and Europe out through Germany when we was in Iraq, and people didn't know, you know, it wasn't like at home where they take and check that out. So this is just a newer version of that. I use this for a lot of food stuff, and I've kept that. And the two Gerbers I had with me all the time I was in Iraq, of course I had a bayonet, but it's kind of useless for food stuff like this. But this knife here, you can kind of see the nicks and stuff on it, and I've used it to death too. But I remember plenty of times, and this is a for like steak knife, porks, ribs, things like that. And this is a Russell, and it served me well, and I've had it long time. And that's what I use that for. So those knives, this more is like a hunting knife, and I went to this to be a little bit more compact. Now this is what the rubber band was for on that earlier knife. Okay. You take the rubber band, you put it around the handle, it's less likely to lose it. The problem with this knife, I think it looks cool, and it's just a cheap little Pakistani knife. It holds a pretty good edge. But when you put your hand around it, it just doesn't feel well. You know, when you pick a knife up, it should fit your hand and fit in your hand. This thing here, I don't know what it is. It's a sharp knife. It stays sharp, but it just doesn't feel well in your hand. And when it's not, don't feel well in your hand, you just don't want to keep it, don't want to use it. I keep it. It's in one of my bags that I carry to work back and forth all the time, you know, cut apples and stuff with it. That's about all I use it for. But it just doesn't feel right in the hand. And so then I went to this knife. What this is a starter kit to make your own knife. And it's got this cheap little paracord I put on here because I tried to make wooden handles for this thing and drive the pins through it, and I just kept screwing it up. This thing here, it says 440C stainless, and it's a Sarge, but I'll tell you what, it doesn't hold an edge. It doesn't stay sharp. You know, it's sharp now because I've just sharpened it, but it just failed me miserably. So when I got this, I thought, let's go to something else. You know, I carried it for about a month, and I didn't like it, so went back to an old reliable. This is an old timer's knife. And I had one of these before, but one of my sons basically ended up with it. And this is an old hunting knife, but this thing's got a great handle on it, rubber, a little bit of cushion in it. And you know, a knife like this don't cost you much. It's less than, I think I picked this up less than $20. You know, so I really enjoy this knife. And they're not hard to find, but there's so many different ones out there. And there's different versions of this one. And I like this knife, but I don't carry it because I'm afraid of losing it, to tell you the truth. It's got a little plastic liner in the sheath there. But I had a version of that before, and it was so beat up, nicked up, tore up. I've only had that in probably a year or so. Stuck off in a drawer and use it very often. So I went to this. This is a cleft knife. And yeah, I got the same old cheap, you know, paracord on there. I must have had 500 yards of that stuff, so I take it, use it when you got it, you know. I'm going to go to some black paracord in this. This is a cheap little buck knife. It's called a Packlight. If I remember right, this thing was not very expensive either. Packlight Skinner, they call it. And this thing's guaranteed. But this little pack knife Skinner right here is a good little knife. I'm telling you what, when you sharpen this knife, it stays there. But you know, it's a camp knife. You're not going to use it to cut cord or anything like that with. You know, I've used it for a few little things, but it's very lightweight. It weighs like 4 ounces. It's got a liner inside the case there. Works pretty good. But it's already wearing right here across the strap. You know, pay for what you get, you know, sometimes. And so that's why that one is. This knife here, another Hunter Skinner knife they call it, was very cheap. And when I got it, I didn't expect much out of it. But I'm going to tell you what, you put this thing in your hand, and you roll your fingers around it, it is solid. It just feels like it's right there. And I've used this the other day. I was using this to cut up pork roast with. And it's a good solid knife. It's pretty thick. It's got a great handle on it. I mean, you see that handle right there? That thing, I don't know what it is. It's got a concave here and a concave here, and the center's a little raised. And it's got the finger grooves. And when you put it in your hand, it just fits my hand perfect. It's just right there. It's thick. It's solid. You know, I like a good solid knife like that. And that one, it hasn't failed me. I've only had it probably, I don't know, over a year probably, but it just feels good in the hand. When you wrap your hand around, it's good. It's got a cheap little case to it. There ain't much there. It's supposed to stay in there when you snug it in. It doesn't fall out, but it's not much of a case. I may have a leather case. A friend of mine makes leather cases. I'd like to have a good leather case for that knife. Snap over on it. Okay, so, you know, let's get out of the hunting knives a little bit. Let's go to the knives that I carry every day, but I do like that one. Alright, so what do? I got into these. These are Smith & Wesson knives. And I thought, well, the name's Smith & Wesson, they ought to be good knives. Well, I'll tell you what, this one here went from $37.95, $17.95, $10.97, $10.87. I mean, you're thinking, Okay, what happened? Well, what happened was they didn't sell very well. Because once people got a hold of them and figured out what they were, this one here, Smith & Wesson knife, Homeland Security, it's got a lot of problems. It locks up really good. The blade doesn't stay sharp. It's got a poor liner lock in it, you know, and I do like a knife you can open with one hand, but it's got some movement in it. It looks kind of cool, really, and I like that about it, but it doesn't have any serration down here. I don't know what it is here lately. I'm just into the serrations. I went to this knife. This is a heavy, put-together knife, and I think I got it almost in the same place. But I really like the serrations on there. I like the knife blade, drop point. I like all that. Lost the thumb hold on it, and I put a bigger button on there, but still kind of stiff. You know, and this thing's heavy. This is about 8 ounces to carry every day in your back pocket. But there's a problem with this. The clips on these get a lot of lateral movement in them. That one's loose. This one's really loose. See that right there? That annoys me to no end, because it doesn't stay in your pocket. You drop it out. I've dropped it on the ground a dozen times. I wish they had put it under that button right there that goes clear through the knife, you know. If they'd have put it under there, it'd probably be a little bit more sturdy. But I like these two knives. I like the looks of them, but they just didn't hold up to what I need. So, you know, you move on to another Smith & Wesson knife. Now this one locks up well. It's got a deep pocket clip on it. It's very strong. I carry this one every day right now because I haven't got my Spyderco back. I had 2 Spydercos. I had a police version of a Spyderco, and it just up and disappeared. I figured one of my sons got a hold of it. I went over to fix his bathroom sink one day, and there it was on the counter at his house. I said, "Hey, how long you had that?" And he said, "Oh, I don't know, 4 or 5 years." So he carried it every day. I wasn't going to take it from him, you know. He said, "Yeah, it's your knife." But I ordered me a Tenacious, so I'm going to probably replace this knife with that Tenacious. I mean, I like the blade length. I like the serrations on it. It's a good sharp knife. It does have a good clip in the back. It's never failed me. But literally, you can take this little button right here, take it out. Now see that? It gets loose. And that, the end of that is under that. So you got to tighten this back down. And, you know, and I'm going to have to take a tool and tighten this with. I'll go get me a punch here later and tighten that down again. But that's the bad thing about this knife, is it loosens up. Looks good, lightweight. It's about 3 ounces. But I don't know. It didn't cost that much, but I don't know. It's just not what I want. So you say, well, why don't you spend the money? You don't have the money to spend, you know. So, you know, some of the cheaper knives I got this knife and this knife here. This is a little Crenshaw that I found literally at a yard sale. Well, my wife found it. She said, "Hey, they got a box of knives over there." I went out and looked. This thing was so dirty and cooked up that you couldn't even open the blade. I had to take a toothbrush and Q-tips and clean it out and oil it so it would work. I carry this one every day. It's really sharp, but it doesn't. It failed me once when I needed it to work. This here is a little cheap Winchester knife, and I'll tell you what, for a cheap knife with a deep pocket clip, this, you can't go wrong with this. And I'll tell you why. This thing locks up really well. And I got some right here. Now what this is strapping from, I work on a semi-truck, and sometimes the end on a strap is kind of folded over like this. And I had this knife right here, and it wouldn't cut that strap. You know what? It took all I could do to get through that strap. So now, you know, go to that one. But I do like knives like this though. This one was a gift. I like the knife blade here. It's got my name on it, you know. This is a P. Graham Dunn knife that they got up in Amish country. Man, this thing is solid and heavy. Got these big liner lock in it. You open it up with one hand. It is right there. You know, we call this the apple corn cob knife because that's what you use it for, is apples and corn cobs. When it locks up, it's solid. It's tight. And then I got a couple little cheap knives. You know, you keep these around your tackle box, toolbox, use them for whatever you need. And people say, well, I wouldn't have a knife like that. Nice little $3 knife. I think I paid $2 for that. You know what? I'd rather have this than nothing at all. But let me show you this right here. This is a Camillus blade made in USA. Alright, I got this knife. Let me zoom in here. It's just going to have to save you the heartache of this. This here was $10. And if you don't know Camillus knives, they are well known. Les Stroud actually just went to Camillus and he started his own knife brand with them. You know, this box says item 720 Heat 365 silver blade plain, made by Daryl Ralph. Camillus blades. Guess what? I got this knife for $10. I liked it. I thought I got a great deal on it. This knife right here, couldn't beat it. But it doesn't match what's on the box. The one on the box has a clip on it. This one doesn't have a clip on it. So when I got home, I looked it up. Guess what? Heat 365 is a counterfeit blade. These are counterfeit. They're out of Spain. My heart kind of sunk a little bit. I thought I just got took. But it's still a good knife. I mean, for a beat up $10 knife, it doesn't bother me none. So, show what I have, what's going on. And I appreciate the contest, the Three Rivers Knives put together, and appreciate the time you want to watch this. But, you know, like anything else, everybody's got their own story and their own things. And I've lost a lot of knives over the years. I had 3 sons, and, you know, the boys' knives are pretty cool. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And I hope this gives someone some idea about, you know, you get what you pay for, and if you want quality, you're going to have to pay for it. Sometimes you just pick up good knives that, you know, mean something to you that you want to keep for a while. So thanks for watching. Appreciate it.